Helios 522. Can you hear me?
Shortly after leaving the island of Cyprus, 2 different alarms had been triggered on the plane. The flight crew was trying to solve the problem with the help of ground engineers. But now radio contact with the plane has been lost. Air traffic control can't get any response from the captain or co-pilot. The flight to Greece normally takes an hour and a half. But the passenger jet has been in the air for over 2 hours, circling in a holding pattern.
We heard that there was an airplane which was flying into the Greek territory and had no communication. Everybody's mind was going to a hijack or to terrorists.
More than 3 million people live in Athens. A plane slamming into the city could cause an incredible loss of life.
This is a runaway aircraft. It's a possible hijacking or it's a possible terrorist act, so let's involve the military.
The Greek Air Force scrambles 2 of its most sophisticated fighter jets to investigate the Helios plane.
Helios 522, do you read? Over.
But the pilots aren't getting any response. One of the jets flies closer to the cockpit. Someone is in the co-pilot's seat, slumped over the controls. But there's no sign of the captain at all. The fighter pilot radios air traffic control in Athens.
Athens ACC, there is one figure in the cockpit of Helios 522. He appears non-responsive. Athens ACC, checking the cabin.
He can see passengers in their seats, but none of them reacts to the presence of the jet. Then the pilot sees someone moving in the cockpit.
Athens Control, there is one person moving in the cockpit of Helios 522. Repeat, there is one person inside the cockpit.
Helios 522, do you read? Over. Helios 522, over. Flight HCY 522, this is Athens radar control.
The F-16s continue shadowing the jet, but there's no response at all from the cockpit.
One of them was actually in a shooting position behind the 737. The other one was nearby the cockpit and he was trying to communicate visually with the person in the cockpit.
Suddenly, the 737 turns left and begins to quickly descend.
Athens ACC, Helios 522 turning sharply, following down.
From more than 10,000 meters, the plane drops towards the ground. Then, 2,100 meters above the ground, the person in the captain's seat acknowledges the fighter jet for the very first time. But no words are exchanged. Neither the fighter pilot nor local air traffic control can make radio contact with the jet. Just after 12 o'clock, almost 3 hours after it took off from the island of Cyprus, Helios Flight 522 slams into the ground.
Athens ACC, Helios 522 is down. Repeat, Helios 522 is down on Grammatico Hill. Over.
Fire and rescue workers rush to the crash site. There are no survivors. Flight attendant Lazaros Temetsian is stunned by what he hears at the company's operations center.
It was the most chaotic scene I've ever seen. When I went back, our operations controller said that he lost the aircraft, and his eyes, he's starting to cry.
Helios is a small company with just 3 jets. Members of the cabin crew have been working together for years. For Paul Simeonides, news of the crash is particularly terrifying. He's a flight attendant for the airline, and so is his fiancée.
I think that must have been the worst 30 minutes of my life following that first image, because Victoria was flying that morning to Glasgow. I had everyone and his brother, every person we knew was calling me up to find out if I'm alive, if Victoria is alive, what happened, why it happened.
At first we said it takes 1 hour and a half to go to Greece, so probably it's not that plane. And it took about 2 or 3 hours later to know that Paris and Maria was on the plane that crashed.
Andreas Prodromou's father didn't know his son had been called to fill in on Flight 522.
I was told that Helios aircraft was lost by radar, and air controllers couldn't contact it. I got worried. I called Andreas's phone. He always had it on, and unfortunately, he wouldn't answer. After that phone call, I felt as if the ground was pulled out from under my feet.
It's the worst air crash in the history of Greece. Most of the 121 victims are from Cyprus. The small island nation declares 3 days of mourning following the crash. It's an eerie disaster. For over an hour, air traffic controllers watched the passenger jet fly in radio silence closer and closer to Athens, with no idea what was happening inside the jet. Now, piece by piece, investigators are trying to find out.
So we climbed over the hill, and there we were, facing this situation, which was beyond any description. I saw a great area in front of me, which was burning. It was black. Burning, people spread, pieces of the airplane.
It is a truly nightmarish sight. I hope that I never experience it again. It was terrible, just terrible.
Investigators immediately start looking for the cause of the crash. In the early days, their efforts take a frustrating turn. They recover the box containing the cockpit voice recorder, but the recorder itself has been thrown clear.
It was difficult for us because we first found the case of the CVR very badly damaged, and we could not find the machine itself.
Bodies recovered from the wreckage are brought to the offices of Athens' chief coroner. Autopsies add more mystery to the case. Everyone on board the plane was alive at the time of the crash.
There were scenarios at the time that they had all died in midair. But the truth, they did not die from inhaling a toxic substance in the airplane or from an explosion. These people died on impact.
But if the passengers were alive the entire flight, why didn't the pilot of the fighter jet see any activity inside the cabin? And who was at the controls as the jet circled over Athens? When investigators find tissue samples in the remains of the cockpit, they make a stunning discovery. The person at the controls of the plane when it crashed was flight attendant Andreas Prodromou, a last-minute addition to the cabin crew. But why was he in the cockpit? Was he trying to save the plane? Or did he deliberately fly it into the ground?